मरीज है every night. You want to make a three judgment. So I said, if you mind, okay, so after you
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته. الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يضلل الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منها رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تسألون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. We ask Allah Jalla Jalaluhu in His infinite wisdom and boundless mercy to send an abundance of prayers and peace on our beloved Messenger Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. We also send greetings of peace and salutations to all his prophets, their families, and to all the believers until the last day. It's such a pleasure to be here with you, brothers and sisters, in this blessed month, at this blessed time of Jummah, as we try to obtain the blessings of this Most High. We can almost feel the sweet fragrance of Ramadan all around us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us so many gifts as Muslims that often we do not realize how lucky we are. And in fact, He tells us, وَقَلِيلٌ مِّنْ إِبَادِيَ شَكُورٌ. How few of my followers, how few of them are really thankful, grateful. And this truly is a month of those kinds of gifts where we should become shakur. There are things that happened on Wednesday when Ramadan started in the ghaib, in the unseen, that had we been able to perceive and to understand them, they really would have been mind-blowing to us. We're told that the gates of paradise are as vast as all of the heavens and the earth, and these gates were opened. Can you even imagine that? Even if you think they're figurative, can you just imagine a gate of like that? And then we're told that all the shayateen are chained. And all of these things are created and done on the order of the One, the Creator Himself. Now imagine that this Creator, He gives you and me, the tiny me, the insignificant me, a specific channel that communicates directly with Him. How unbelievable would that be? Now, I work at a hospital. If I want to have a meeting with the hospital president, I have to make an appointment. His secretary will call me, and invariably it will not be this week, as in the week coming up. I'll be lucky if it's next week. Yet, his boss, the boss of all of us, is saying, you call me anytime, and especially in this month of Ramadan, and I will answer you. Allah, the All-Wise, the All-Powerful, and from His unconditional love, His lutf, He opens up pathways for us to speak directly to Him. Again, who are we? We are essentially nothing. We are a speck on earth, which itself is a smaller, tiny, tiny blue speck in the Milky Way, which itself is a speck in the universe. Yet, the creator of all of this, the creator of you and I, the creator of that blue speck and of the universe, He opens up channels for us to be in direct communication with Him. Now process that for a second. In our time of sadness, in our time of joy, in our time of loss, in our time of gain, in the morning, in the night, we, the insignificant us, actually have a window to talk to Him. This is min rahmati wa min fadli bihi. Yani, this is a fadl from Him. It's His compassion, His generosity, and His grace that He invites us and allows us to speak to Him directly. And He tells us, وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي أَنِّي فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ أُجِيبُ دَعْوَةَ الدَّاعِ إِذَا دَانِي فَلْيَسْتَجِيبُوا لِي وَلْيُؤْمِنُوا بِي لَعَلَّهُمْ يَرْشُدُونَ. And when my slaves ask you concerning me, then indeed I am near. I respond to the invocations of the supplicant when he calls on me. Ujibi da'wati da'i idha dani. I respond to the invocations of the supplicant. فَلْيَسْتَجِيبُوا لِي. So let them obey me. وَلْيُؤْمِنُوا بِي, and believe in me. لَعَلَّهُمْ يَرْشُدُونَ, so that they may be on the right path. Allah tells us that He is close all the time. But imagine in this month, at this time, how qareeb He really is. And in another verse we read, وَقَالَ رَبُّكُمْ أُدْعُونِي أَسْتَجِبْ لَكُمْ. And your Lord says, call on me and I will answer you. I respond to the caller if they call. The only condition is that you call. We only need to call to Him, Ya Allah, and the door is open, bifadlillah. Ud'uni astajib lakum. Call on me and I will respond to you. And the Mufassirun, they make a very key observation here, that Allah is using ibadah to reference what? Reference dua. The Prophet says that supplicating is an act of worship, or is worship itself. So if worship is manifested in anything, it is in dua, because dua is the epitome of expressiveness when we surrender to Allah. We raise our hands, we're saying, Ya Allah, we come to you in a state of humility, in dire need, in quiethood. We have so many prophetic traditions that say that when we just raise our hands like this, Allah is shy to allow your hands to come down empty. He will respond. And what about those who do not call on Him? In the Quran we read, call on me, I will answer you, but those who are too arrogant to serve me will surely find themselves in hell, in humiliation. And it's true, when someone doesn't call you, effectively they're saying, I don't really care for you, I don't really need you. And that is a form of arrogance, something we want to avoid at all costs. So how can we call on Him? How can we improve our signal to the Supreme so that we have 5 bars, especially at this time, and not 1 bar? Well, I'm going to tell you an amazing pearl. You can call it a shortcut or maybe even a trick. And then we'll inshallah break it down to see how we can use it in our own lives and in our specific situation. So what is that pearl? What is that trick? It is to look closely, to study those Greek people that Allah chose as His prophets and His messengers, His Anbiya, His Rasul, and ask, how did they communicate with Allah? What you realize is that Allah gifted them with such beautiful speech that they could say 4 or 5 words that would capture a lifetime of what we can try to emulate. Subhanallah. So let's illustrate this with the story of Dhul Noon, the man of the fish, Sayyidina Yunus alayhi salam. He's also called Jonah. When he prematurely ran away from his people in frustration and in anger, because he felt that they were being obstinate and not listening to the message he was trying to convey to them. He thought he'd get as far away as possible, and as you know, consequently ran onto a small ship, which, as you know, was met with this terrible storm. The other sailors on the ship, they were polytheists, and they thought that this was maybe caused by the gods fighting, and they thought they had to make a sacrifice and someone should be thrown overboard. So they drew lots. And whose name came up? But Yunus's name. But not only was Yunus the youngest amongst them, they also knew he was very honorable, so they kind of felt bad. And they said, let's do it again. And when they did it again, Yunus's name came up again. So they thought, oh, this poor guy, give him a third chance. And lo and behold, his name came up again and he had to be thrown overboard. And he was cast into the dark sea and swallowed by the massive fish, as you know. So the Quran uses the word dhulumat in plural form to mean not just darkness, but multiple layers of darkness, i.e. layer upon layer of darkness and dread. So imagine the terror of being caught in the darkness of the night, a night with howling winds and storms and large waves of the sea, with no light whatsoever. And as you know, the water absorbs light. And so the water itself is very, very dark on a night like this. And then we are penetrating into the depths of the ocean, which it gets even darker. And then from down below comes a dark shadow that essentially swallows you up whole. So there is several layers of darkness that you see here. And then there is also the spiritual layer of darkness, in that Yunus had run away from a task that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had given him. And the word that the Quran uses is abaqa, which connotes flight of someone who is responsible, like a slave from his master. So from all these layers of dread and darkness and despair, what does Yunus do? He begins to call out in dua, La ilaha illa anta. There is no God except you. Subhanaka, exalted are you. Inni kuntum min ad-dhalimin. Indeed, I have been among the wrongdoers. This is such a short, beautiful, but powerful dua. La ilaha illa anta, subhanaka inni kuntum min ad-dhalimin. It encompasses where we're going today, what I'm trying to get to today. Yunus alayhi salam, in just a few words, he encompasses the greatness of his Lord and his own wrongdoing and asking for forgiveness. He was repeating this invocation over and over, and it is so beautiful that Ibn Khatib tells us that the fish and the seaweeds and the other creatures of the sea that were close at hand, they could hear the voice of Yunus coming from the belly of the fish. They heard the celebration of Allah's praises. They gathered around the whale and began to celebrate the praises of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, each in its own way and its own language. And then in the next verse in the Quran, we're told, فَاسْتَجَبْنَا لَهُ. So we answered him, وَنَجَيْنَاهُ, and we saved him, مِنَ الْغَمِّ, from his distress and his grief and his despair. And then goes on to say, وَكَذَلِكَ نَنْجِي الْمُؤْمِنِينَ, and thus do we deliver the believers. There is a hadith of the Prophet which says, whoever offers a supplication in the words of Yunus will be answered. And this is the verse that the Prophet was referring to. Now let's see another example. You know the story of Yusuf alayhi salam. He goes through so many hardships. After hardships, he was thrown in a well, he was thrown in jail, all for nothing that he did. But we're told in Surah Yusuf 101 of this beautiful dua that he makes. And how he starts the dua is telling, Fatir samawati. That's how we started the dua. We're going to it. Fatir samawati. So no, Ibn Abbas, he tells us that he didn't really understand the meaning of this word until he saw two men arguing over a well. One of them says, Ana fahturtu, I dug the well. And the other says, Ana fatortu, yani, I originated the idea of this space. So Ibn Abbas realized that Fatir is even before the creation. It is something that is still in the plans, that's still not done. So Yusuf recognizes that even before the universe was there were Allah's plans for it. He was there even before anything was even there. So he begins with this very high praise and understanding of Allah, to whom there is no praise that is enough. Fatir as-samawati wal-ardi, anta wali fi dunya wal-akhirah. I also love this because a wali is a guardian, it's a protector. But the definition also encompasses your best friend. Your best friend are also your protectors. So he says, you are my guardian, my best friend in this world and in the next. Look also how he acknowledges that he is the originator of the heavens and the earth, and then juxtaposes this with his best friend, his guardian in this world and the next. And he's also saying that everyone else, he lost his father whom he loved dearly, and maybe the father loved him just as dearly or more. He lost any friends, he lost anything that he ever had, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was always there with him. No matter what trial, tribulation, difficulty he went through, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was always with him. So he was saying to us, never give up hope. You may be in distress, you may be in despair, but the mercy of Allah is qareeb, especially now, in this month, at this time. And all we need to do is to call to him. And then Yusuf ends with only one request. Tawaffani musliman wa alhiqni bis salihin. Cause me to die a Muslim and join me with the righteous. What an incredible dua. Again, so few words, but encompasses everything. So when you look at these duas, what you realize is that the Anbiya are doing is that they're starting their dua by praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Think about it for a moment. This is advice we give our children. One does not start a conversation by saying, I want this or I want that. Even in polite conversation, if I was to meet you, brother, or meet this other brother here, they would say, Assalamu alaikum, how are you? How's your wife? Are your children behaving? Are they in school? Etc. And then you get into the conversation. Hey, you know what? MCSS iftar is coming up, etc., etc. So when we raise our hands up to Allah, the first thing you start with is by praising him. There's a hadith to this, in fact, where a man who had his hands up and said, I want this, or please give me this. And the Prophet was passing by, and he said that this man had been istajil. He had been hasty. He did not have patience. So the companions asked, what should he have said? And the Messenger of Allah said that when one of you makes a dua to Allah, let him begin by praising Allah and by glorifying him. Tahmeed, praise of Allah, and tasbih, the glorification of Allah. None is more befitting of praise than Allah, and no one should be more praised than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in fact, Allah teaches us by doing this in the Quran. The Quran is full of praise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Therefore, when we begin dua, we should start in this way, and the Prophet's duas are a beautiful reminder of how to do this. Now remember Sayyidina Ibrahim, as his whole tribe builds this huge structure that's so high that even we're told the birds could not fly over it because of the heat from that fire. And what does he say when Jibreel comes to him? Hasbunallahi wa ni'mal wakeel. Hasbunallahi wa ni'mal wakeel. Allah alone is sufficient for me, and he is the best wakeel. Again, such a short, powerful dua, beginning with the praise that he alone can do this. No one else is capable. No one else is needed. And he is the best wakeel. And then what does Allah command the fire? Kuli bardan wa salamun ala Ibrahim. In my home language, back home in Kenya, in Kiswahili, baridi connotes something that's really cold. Leoni baridi means today is very, very cold. But Allah's bard is in a different league completely. It would have been so cold, it would have frozen Ibrahim. So the nar is told to be salam, peaceful to Ibrahim. It was like he was sitting in air conditioning in that fire. This is the power of those duas. So each and every one of us, we all have our baggage. We're all carrying problems with our children, with our spouses. We're all in need of healing. We may have physical ailments. And as a society, we're becoming more and more aware of mental health issues. We have financial struggles. So every one of us has a proverbial blazing fire. But here are 4 words in this sacred month that you can make and repeat over and over, that inshallah Allah can make for us. Bardan wa salamun ala fulan wa fulan. So we tried the best to use the names and attributes of Allah within the dua. And in fact, Allah commands us to do so in the Quran. In 2 verses, Allah tells us, وَلِلَّهِ الْأَسْمَاءُ الْحُسْنَى. And to Allah belong the best names. فَادْحُوا بِهَا. So call him by them. And amongst the most beautiful names is that whatever dua you need to make, you will find a name or an attribute that is related to the dua. So for example, if you're asking for forgiveness, then subhanAllah, the bulk of Allah's names surround mercy. Ya Rahim, Ya Ghafoor, Ya Ghafar, Ya Afu. If you're sick, Ya Shafi. If you want a child, Ya Wahhab. If you need generosity, Ya Kareem, Ya Akramul Akrameen. You cannot think of any dua except that there is a name of Allah that matches it. That is the point. So we've heard about Ibrahim and Yunus and Yusuf alayhi salam. And here's another example from our own beloved Prophet, the Rasul of Allah. You all know the dua that he taught Aisha in the last 10 days of Ramadan. Allahumma innaka afuun tuhibbul afwa fa'fu anna. Oh Allah, you love to forgive, so forgive us. Notice that he started with Allahumma innaka afuun. Oh Allah, you love to forgive. You are the forgiver. He didn't go straight to forgive us. He started with that high praise. So let's inshallah in the sacred month when dua is accepted more frequently, and this is a reminder to me first, start to make dua like a Rambiya. And this is what is called tawassul, or coming close to Allah through His names and attributes. By the way, an easy way to do this, if you can't immediately think of a name, is to use our ultimate reference, the Quran. And what is the name of Allah that is used most commonly in the Quran that He uses for these du'as? Rabbana. Rabbana, which means, oh you, the one who will take care of me. It means the one who nourishes, the one who takes care of. So when you say, you are my Rabb, means who else will solve my problem except for you? I have no one else except for you. So another way to make your dua rise higher is that we mention to Allah good deeds that we have done. This is called tawassul through your own good deeds. This is only done when you really need a dua to be answered, when you're in a desperate situation. And this is mentioned in a hadith of Bukhari, where 3 men were trapped in a cave and a rock had fallen over it, and each one of them mentioned a good deed. One of them could have stolen some money, but he did not. One of them was very righteous to his mother and father, and one of them could have followed his father into zina, but refused to do so. So each one of them mentioned this good deed, and every time they mentioned the deed, the stone moved a little bit. Oh Allah, you know, I did this good deed for your sake, please move the stone. And each time they prayed, the stone would move, and eventually they were able to grasp the stone and move it. So this hadith shows us that you can link your good deeds to a dua to raise it up somewhat. And another way you can increase your tawassul is by begging and pleading to Allah through a situation that you are in that is rare and dire, a type of bad situation you would not encounter on an everyday basis. In fact, it may be something you would encounter once in a decade, something of that kind of nature. So just to summarize, tawassul through Allah's names, tawassul through your good deeds, and tawassul through a dire situation. An example of the dire situation would be our father Adam alayhi salam, when he says in the dua, رَبَّنَا ظَلَمْنَا أَنفُسَنَا وَإِن لَمْ تَغْفِرْ لَنَا وَتَرْحَمْنَا لَنَكُونَنَّ مِنَ الْخَاسِرِينَ. My Lord, we have wronged ourselves. If you don't forgive us and bestow mercy on us, we surely will be the losers. So you see here, he did not start with praise, but through this very difficult situation now where he was being removed from Jannah, he was being removed from paradise. And he said, if you do not forgive us, we will surely be losers. Or for example, the example of Zakaria, when he is old and he doesn't have any children, he pleads to Allah with the state that he is in. That could, when you read it, it will break anyone's heart. My bones are old and infirm. My hair has turned white. I'm so old and I fear that my relatives are after me. So give from yourself an heir to me. And as you know, then Allah bestowed on him Yahya alayhi salam. Similarly, Musa, when he was to flee into the valley, he says, oh Allah, I am a fakir. He uses the word fakir, which means someone who is down and out, a beggar, someone in true need. And remember his dua, Rabbi inni lima anzaltu ilayha min khayrin fakir. My Lord, truly I am in need of whatever good you can give me. He didn't have anything at that time. He was running away from the Pharaoh. All he had was the clothes on his back. And he makes this very powerful dua that we should all memorize as well. Rabbi inni lima anzaltu ilayha min khayrin fakir. And he is referring to the fact that he's a fakir. And essentially from that, Allah sent 2 daughters of the shepherd, and he got shelter, he got married, he got a wife, he got land from one dua through the situation that he was in. Now, Allah of course knows your situation. You cannot call yourself fakir when you're not. Or if you have plenty, you cannot say that I do not have that. But if you're in a dire situation, this is one of the etiquettes of the dua that inshallah will raise it up. And before we complete this section, another etiquette is somewhere at the beginning or the end, we should send salawat and salam to our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Allahumma salli wa sallim ala sayyidina wa habibina wa shafiina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. This also elevates the dua. You will see this when the imams are doing this. You listen to the imams in the haram. They'll at some point in the dua, they add the salawat in there. And then if we do this, inshallah, we're told that Allah is shy to reject your dua. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفره إنه غفور رحيم. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulihi wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'een. I would like to start to draw to a close by first summarizing what we've said, which is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He tells us, فَإِنِّي قَرِيب, that He is close by, أُجِيبُ دَعْوَةِ الدَّاءِ إِذَا دَانِي, that He responds to the invocations of the supplicant when he calls on Him. And this is the month to ask for the supplications, to increase your dua, to elevate your dua. So in essence, Allah tells us that He responds to our duas, and the way that we process our duas is to learn from the prophets, to learn their techniques, to use tahmeed, tasbih, and tawassul. And we said that there's 3 types of tawassul that we went over. And what I would like to say is, like everything else, this needs practice. And if you practice, inshallah, you will become perfect at it. It doesn't come naturally. And if you find it very difficult, just memorize these short duas. They're not difficult. They're just a few words, as we said when we started, 4 or 5 words. Memorize them and use them in your own dua. And inshallah, as we have said, Allah will not let your hands go down empty, especially in this month of Ramadan. And the final piece, O believers in Allah, is that we should, each and every one of us, never give up hope. No matter what has happened, no matter what you think you may have done or someone else may have done in your family, never despair of the mercy of Allah. It will always be there for you. He is Ghafurur Rahim. He tells us again and again that He is the most merciful. This is the month through dua that you get the best chance to do that. This is the month of maghfirah, where we get to rewrite our own scripts, start with a clean page, and let's inshallah wipe our sheets clean and start over. And this is a lesson to me too. Increase our duas and add these elements that we have talked about. And we're also in the first ashra of Ramadan. The period that we're told is all about mercy. وَقُلْ رَبِّ اغْفِرْ وَارْحَمْ وَأَنْتَ خَيْرُ الرَّاحِمِينَ. In terms of hope, we covered Ibrahim earlier, as you remember, he was about to enter that fire, so much so that Jibreel tells him that all of creation, including Jibreel himself, were very concerned about Ibrahim. Yet Ibrahim, what was he? He was calm. How is it that he's about to be thrown in this fire, that Jibreel is anxious, all of creation is anxious, and Ibrahim himself is not? It is because of that tawakkul of Allah. Because he knew, Hasbunallahi wa ni'mal wakil. When you have that tawakkul of Allah, Allah will not forsake you. He will never forsake you. And Ibrahim, he knew this. He knew that Allah will be at his aid. Even at that moment as he was flying to get into the fire, he knew that Allah will not forsake him. And another example is of Musa alayhi salam. You know, when Musa, when he left Egypt, and they were going to with the children of Israel, and they had been caught by the army of the Pharaoh right at the sea. And those companions of his, they became anxious. They were like, that's it. They came to Musa and they said, we're done for. We're goners. We're not going to survive. We have nowhere to go. The army is behind us and the sea is in front of us. We have nowhere to go. And what did Musa say? Kulla. He didn't only say la. No, he says kulla. There's no way. I reject what you are saying. I reject your premise. Completely reject it. And why did he say that? Inna maya rabbi sayahdeen. With me is my Lord. He will guide me. And he's teaching us all a lesson, that even at the time when you think that all is lost, with you is your Lord. With you is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He is behind you. Have the faith in Him and He will reward you. He will answer your dua. And you know what happens? Allah tells Musa to use his staff and strike the sea, and the sea is raised up like a mountain on each side, and the children of Israel pass safely, and the Pharaoh and his horde are drowned. And Musa again teaches us a lesson, never to give up hope regardless of the circumstances that we find ourselves in. So again, if we had to copy the Prophet, we can see that Allah's mercy and His guidance is always just around the corner. لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك إني كنت من الظالمين فاتر السماوات والأرض أنت ولي في الدنيا والآخرة توفني مسلما والحقني بالصالحين ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين وقل رب اغفر وارحم وأنت خير الراحمين اللهم اجعلنا من أتقاء شهر رمضان اللهم أجرنا من النار اللهم أجرنا من النار اللهم أجرنا من كل أمل يقربنا من النار اللهم أدخلنا الجنة مال الأبرار يا عزيز يا غفار يا رب العالمين. Ya Allah, in this month of Ramadan, please help us and help our families. Ya Allah, bring blessings into our homes and blessings into our community. Ya Allah, we ask you to alleviate us of any suffering and any ill health that we have. Ya Allah, we ask those in our families who have passed away that you grant them a place in Jannat al-Firdaus. And Ya Allah, when our time comes, grant us a place in Jannat al-Firdaus. Ya Allah, we pray for those in the Muslim Ummah who are in distress, whether it is in Palestine or in Syria or in Yemen or in Kashmir. Ya Allah, we ask that you alleviate their suffering. Ya Allah, we ask that you help our children, no matter what they are studying or if they're in school or in their jobs and everything. Ya Allah, give them hidayah, keep them on the path of Islam. Ya Allah, those who are looking for spouses, help them to get married and have children who walk in your path. And Ya Allah, we thank you for the benefits and the gifts of Ramadan. Ya Allah, we are always in debt to you. And Ya Allah, we ask that you answer our prayers. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم وصلى الله تعالى على خير خلقه سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين سبحانك ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. عباد الله إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. أقم الصلاة.
الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله. حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح. قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
لا إله إلا الله. Stand in straight lines, please fit in the rows. Pray like this is your last salah. Allahu Akbar.